I love video games. I love movies. I love video essay reviews on games and movies. I also happen to love Wuthering Waves, despite what some might say. So why not start a series that includes both? After playing through all of 2.2, and I mean all of 2.2, I have a lot of thoughts. I want this to be the first of hopefully many videos where I do a full-on nosedive into every facet of this patch that I could think of and have experienced, both to judge the trajectory of this game, and also to help new players decide if this is a strong patch to start the game with. Depending on what you guys think of the series, I'm down to go back and do videos on the previous patches as well. But for now, I'm 𝗖𝗆𝗆𝗵𝘁, and on the first episode of Wuthering Waves Below the Surface, I'm going to be tackling Wuthering Waves patch 2.2, Tangled Truth in Inverted Tower.
The one blessed by the dark tide shall return to us.
Both you and I were cursed to be mere playthings of the 𝗖𝗆𝗆𝗵𝘁.
Please, tell her I'm sorry.
Continue thy disobedience at the risk of insanity.
Come to me, mighty God killer.
This is me being true to myself.
I am your blade. We'll find it together.
But I prefer to handle this my way.
Just for any strangers that may have stumbled upon this, or anyone who's been scoping out the Wuthering Waves scene and can't decide if it's something worth getting into, let's get some basics out of the way and make sure we're all on the same page here. Wuthering Waves is a free-to-play, open-world, action role-playing gacha game, developed and published by Kuro Games, the company behind Twin Tail Battleground and Punishing Gray Raven. Released on May 22nd, 2024, you enter the futuristic but post-apocalyptic world of Solaris 3. A near-extinction event known as the Lament wiped out the majority of humanity, leaving monsters in its wake known as Tacit Discords. You take control of the rover and navigate through the world, trying to regain your lost memories and understand the key role you play in this world. With that out of the way, let's set some ground rules. I'm going to be grading the patch on a couple of categories, and I'm going to try to be as thorough as possible. That being said, the categories are going to consist of story, storytelling, soundtrack, playable content, overall asteroid acquisition, and the new resonators / banners. A couple things. I specifically separated the storytelling from story for a reason. Just like anything in life, no matter how great the product is, the delivery of it can easily make or break it. You can have the most beautifully crafted, tight-knit, intricate, and powerful story.
You were the chosen one! It was said that you would destroy the Sith, not join them!
But if you give it to me through a wet McDonald's napkin,
but the women and the children too.
I'm gonna take it, use it to wipe the Big Mac sauce off my face, and throw it in the garbage can. It's plain and simple. And this specific issue is huge in gacha games. We're at a point where gacha games want to enter the AAA market. So if they're gonna do that, we better be getting AAA content. You know, as much AAA as we can get from a gacha game. Now, regarding the category of new characters and banners, I'm on the side that new characters should not be content and it shouldn't be considered content. If that was the case, then the person who pulled on the banner has a very different patch quality compared to the person that didn't. That being said, since this is a gacha game, new characters are vital to the longevity of the game and is an easy signal for us to see in which direction the game is headed, and the overall evolution of the gameplay as a whole. So I'll be grading the new resonators individually based on how strong they are out the gate, as well as how useful they will be to a new player. It's also the main reason why I'm factoring how much asteroid we'll be getting per patch as a free-to-play player. Keyword, free to play. If you're going to market to a demographic of people who probably cannot afford to purchase, say it with me, actual games, then you should be providing enough resources for said player to at the very least have a chance at your RNG machine. That being said, let's move on to the first category, story. In patch 2.2, we start out talking to our dear Neopet Abby, who is literally dying faster with every passing second. Probably realizing we wasted a lot of time fishing and fucking around with Brant, he suggests we go to the highest point of 𝗖𝗇 Town and try to get to the floating tower in the sky. It's there where we really kick off this journey, meeting a new face, 𝗖𝗽𝗆𝗆. She's literally a Baldur's Gate 3 CAC, and I love her. I love her so much. She is everything. Sorry, Carlotta and 𝗖𝗍𝗆. We find out that she's a member of the Montelli family who was sent to us by one of our 7 wives, I mean Carlotta. 𝗖𝗍𝗆𝗆 was sent to aid us in gathering more details regarding 𝗏𝗏𝗆, the mysterious blessed, or not blessed maiden, depending on who you talk to, that we met at the very end of the main story quest of patch 2.0. With her forte, she allows us to re-experience our meeting from an outside perspective, where we also managed to find 𝗏𝗏𝗆 herself, due to a supposed connection we shared through our tacit marks. Sorry, Windolf, you gotta get in line with the rest of oddly attractive women that all seem to share a connection with me. I'd recommend not getting too close to the Vining one, she could get a little weird. Anyway, we disclosed that we were brought to her by Imperator, the sentinel that governs Rincita, much like how Jue is the sentinel for Huanglong. We soon find out that 𝗏𝗏𝗆𝗆 herself is unsure if she's the resonator to Imperator or the Threnodian, explaining how her memories are fragmented and that she could retrieve her memories by reaching the tower up in the sky, where her true powers remain sealed. See how things are lining up? How the goals are aligning, how
Rivers eventually converge into the same ocean. If a goal is mutual, then it's only a matter of time before they meet.
Yeah, anyway, that segues us into meeting the banner character for this patch. After 𝗏𝗏𝗆𝗆 informs us that with no way inside the Sonarosphere she's residing in, we should go to this quote-unquote jellyfish person that 𝗏𝗏𝗆𝗆 has been sensing wandering outside the barrier, searching for a way in. Enter Cantarella, head of the 𝗏𝗍𝗆 family, in order to get 𝗏𝗏𝗆𝗆's memories back, find out whether she's the resonator to Leviathan or Imperator, and to finally meet with Imperator. Alright, past this point is going to be full on spoilers, so I'll put a timestamp up here in case you want to just skip to the overall grade and experience the story yourself. With that being said, let me share my honest thoughts about the story. The main story for 2.2 is honestly pretty solid, probably one of the more solid ones throughout WoW's entire history. Kuro tells a story with just enough information to keep you questioning and wanting to learn more, but not enough information to indicate some kind of obvious answer. You have a solid beginning with a decent amount of exposition that just approaches the line of too much but doesn't get there. The middle is a nice moment of rising action with strong character development and decent twists in the story. And the ending is an incredible climax of emotion and action. The stakes genuinely feel high, while also remaining relatively contained. I love how each character involved has their own struggle that just so happens to coincide with each other, without it feeling forced. I also love the juxtaposition of 𝗏𝗏𝗆𝗆 and Cantarella, and sticking them together in this mission. Cantarella is someone who is certain of her role, and even when the circumstances fog up, she still remains calm and resolute, showing us that there wasn't a single moment where she doubted her ability to achieve her goal. She's the complete polar opposite of 𝗏𝗏𝗆𝗆, who throughout the story is rather bashful, uncertain, and reluctant to know the truth, despite understanding that she has an objective to achieve. They interact a handful of times, but every single time that they do, you can immediately tell why these two unlikely characters were put in a main quest together, made further compelling once you find out that they share the same moniker and role. Speaking of Cantarella, her role in the story cannot be underrated. It's a bit of an understatement to say that Cantarella has had some opposition during her rollout, and Kuro knocked it out of the park by making a character that is more than just her appearance. They could have easily made her some boring, straightforward, fan-servicey character, but giving her such a critical role, and also making it believable with her personality, was a very well-executed decision. Her playing the role as a secret backup Blessed Maiden was something I genuinely didn't expect, and they did a good job at hinting at the fact that Cantarella knows just a little more than she's letting on throughout the story. She's not a flat character either. See what I did there? She has nuance to her. She isn't some evil villain, but she isn't a pure hero either. She very heavily lies in the morally gray, and that's okay. It's okay to have characters that aren't fully on the side of good or evil. She has killed people before, she has killed her own before, but she is someone who takes her role as a leader very seriously. 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 is amazing on screen as well. Her and Rover have really good chemistry, and you could truly see her internal struggle fluctuate throughout the story. And, I mean, do I even have to mention how cute these scenes were?
Dry soon. A few details, if you don't mind.
Feeling nervous?
Of course. The last time I tried to pass it like this...
They put a strong emphasis on ensuring you grow attached to 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏, at the very least grow to like her. If they had failed even once getting me to care for this character, this whole story would have felt flat. Speaking for the vast majority, Kuro Games did a good job letting us sympathize with her as she uncovered her memories. When the memory was something that she was proud of, you can feel her will strengthening. But when she finds out that she was created by Leviathan, you can both see and feel her resolve falter, and it's not hard to see why. The reveal that the very person who was supposed to defend 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 was also the cause of the Dark Tide was a heartbreaking one, and you could see how it affected her mental leading up to the final act of the story, pushing her to conclude that her desire to keep on living was selfish, and to kill her right there. More on that in a little bit. There aren't many side characters. 2 at most if you want to count Abby, but it's hard to do that considering he's with us throughout the journey and does provide decent input. As someone who doesn't really care for gimmicky companions, I think Abby perfectly balances being a method of tension levity while also acting as a driving force in the story. Though, I can't lie, I don't really know if we made any progress towards this issue, but... never mind, 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 just fixes Abby. Oh. Okay. I guess. 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 is amazing. 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 is perfect. 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 is everything, and I'll die on that hill. Jokes aside, she leaves such a strong impression for the little screen time she has. We talk to her for probably 5% of the journey, but we already get the kind of character she is. She's excitable, silly, a little on the ditzy side, but we could pass it off as eccentric. She's the perfect encapsulation of someone I wanted to see from the Montelli family after the calm and cool but deadly Carlotta, and Zani, who's very practical but still down to earth and leans over to what I like to call 𝗖cie𝗽𝗆𝗆𝗆isms. She's a nice contrast and really hones in on the idea that these mafia families have a bunch of members throughout the region. Great character. Can't wait to pull and slam some tacit feels with a banjo. We finally meet Imperator and it's cool. Not much to say, it's a divine being. That being said, I did find our conversation at the end interesting, and that line where he essentially goes, "Was I a good boy?" and we go, "The bestest," was a nice touch and really builds the idea of how respected Rover really is. We really get a sense of how beyond our human comprehension these beings are. I mean, the Dark Tide hurt millions. Despite this, Imperator carries on and explains how it was simply the result of his experimentation. It toes this line of making Imperator seem heartless, but in actuality, what could it have done? It had a task and had to figure it out. That being said, when Imperator does ask, "Was I wrong?" maybe it was the voice direction, but it really does humanize the being, and Rover's response was a good one, saying that who's alive in the aftermath doesn't have the right to judge. And I do appreciate Imperator being the sacrifice for 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏. While it sucks that we couldn't have a legitimate death, I think the loss of a sentinel is a good way to go about it and honestly brings rise to tension if Kuro chooses to focus on it. The loss of a region sentinel is huge, and I hope we get to see what that entails. However, at the end of the day, this is still a gacha story, so there are gonna be some issues. For one, when you lay out everything that happened in the patch and cut out all the hype and adrenaline while playing and really just reading what occurred, you're kind of left with the question,
Hey yo, what the fuck?
like, let's do a quick rundown. So basically, Imperator was assigned by Rover, also known as the Arbiter, to find out anything and everything about the Threnodian to be able to defeat it, with a condition that Imperator could act without restriction. Unable to figure out what the fuck the deal is with them, he allows Leviathan to use its power of assimilation to combine, so Leviathan and Imperator are now one being. This way, Imperator was hoping to be able to understand the Threnodian and find a weakness, which we find out there is none. As long as humanity is alive, the Threnodians will persist, and even the Threnodians don't know how they can die. Leviathan, now combined with Imperator, does some brain snooping and finds out that they can get themselves a shiny resonator. But Imperator hides the fact that they as these celestial beings are bound to only one. Using Imperator's return pod, yeah, I don't know what the fuck this means, Leviathan creates Fleur-de-Lis to be its resonator, unaware that this would also make Fleur-de-Lis Imperator's resonator. Fleur-de-Lis is then crowned the Blessed Maiden by the Order, then boom, Dark Tide hits, everyone hitting the Dougie of Doom. Fleur-de-Lis fights the corrupted Imperator-Leviathan amalgamation, finds out she was created by Leviathan, fights Leviathan, who then tries to assimilate into Fleur-de-Lis. The part of Fleur-de-Lis that wants to live then splits away and becomes Cartethia to avoid corruption and wanders Renacida. Imperator then seals some of his power into Tervine, just in case that Fleur-de-Lis becomes corrupted, so that a second resonator can be chosen, and therefore breaking the divine law that states that they can only have one resonator, and essentially making Fleur-de-Lis, Leviathan, and Imperator go kaboom. He gives this to the Phassalias, who conduct trial after trial to find a resonator that would be chosen, and it finally chooses Cantarella. Cantarella then finds out Fleur-de-Lis is still fighting, so she gives up her second awakening to give Imperator just enough power to hopefully turn the tides against Leviathan, who's still trying to corrupt Fleur-de-Lis. This is what Cantarella was referring to when she said the maiden is dead. So bing bang boom, we're here, we recover Cartethia's lost memories, and when we fight Fleur-de-Lis, it's right after she killed the corrupted Imperator. We kill Fleur-de-Lis, then killing Leviathan, and also killing Cartethia. But then the Imperator, with the loss of his power, speaks to us, tells us everything I just said, sacrifices itself to revive Cartethia, who chooses not to forget her past, fuses with Fleur-de-Lis, and finally concludes 2.2. If you're confused, don't worry, that's kinda expected. There's a lot of weirdness and a lot of moments where you ask, wait, why did that happen? Or, how did that happen? And a lot of it is kinda just answered by, oh, they're gods, that's what they do. That's kind of a core issue with fantasy. A lot of things can be waved away because fantasy uses rules that don't apply to us, and things we ourselves cannot comprehend. The genre takes advantage of that and can do some wacky things. And if I got something wrong, I apologize, but when the story kind of avoids using dates or actual times other than 20 years ago, it's a little difficult to piece everything together, and in a whole can sound kind of convoluted. Though the game does a decent job of making all this information digestible when you get it, it doesn't make it any less awkward to try and recite to someone who has not played. Now, it's not egregiously bad. Overall, the story does make sense, in the sense that yes, these events don't feel completely out of character, nor do they feel like they wouldn't happen. But it's easy to get confused along the way with how awkward the timing of certain revelations are, while also not really delving too much into new findings when we get the chance. We spend a lot of time explaining past events and lore, but when something new comes up, it feels like we're just skimming past it. Despite this, now this might be a reach, but benefit of the doubt, maybe it was intentional. We're following this journey of an amnesiac, and revelations of this magnitude are meant to be confusing and hard to grasp, especially in an environment where they are literally risking their lives and are in constant danger. It's not too surprising that we as a player also just have to take in the information and move along, no matter how many more questions it brings up. Probably not the case, but if it was, really cool idea that could be cleaned up a little bit in execution. The only thing I wish regarding Cartethia's character was that I wish we had a little more time with her. Though the pacing was decent in this batch, I can't help but feel like the finale would have had a grander feeling if we had spent some time with Cartethia in patch 2.1. It would have made her quote-unquote death a little more believable, because let's be real, we all knew she wasn't actually gonna die in the patch of her storyline. Not in a gacha game anyway. Besides that, I felt like there was a huge missed opportunity on having Rover and Cartethia bond over being amnesiacs. They're both characters with fragmented memories trying to figure out and understand what their purpose in the world is. The only hint being that it's something grand. You would think these two characters would bond over that a little more instead of waterfalls. Of course, this also leads into the gathering wife shtick. Listen, I'm all for the main character actually having presence in the story. I love it, in fact, but I do think we could have a relationship with women without adding romance to it. It's a minor gripe that I think would enhance a story, but it doesn't take anything away from it for me personally. It would have just been nice to have a different kind of relationship with these characters. Give me a rival, give me someone who hates me but still forced to work with me. Give me someone that looks up to me as a teacher or someone who sees me as a student. Variety is all I'm asking for. Now, regarding Abby, see, I might be a little biased. I think Abby's a pretty cool guy. He's entertaining, not obnoxious, and actually feels like a companion character whose only purpose isn't to be a cute little mascot. He has personality and isn't a chatterbox that just talks for the sake of talking. And this motherfucker been dying since 1.0 patches, so this guy on a countdown. Yet, his issues get resolved so fast that you barely even notice they got fixed. No, seriously. For all the things that happens to the little Rugrat, I can't even tell what's a good thing and what's a bad thing. He's a hungry little fuck that needs sustenance, but then here he's complaining about this power that's taking up too much space? Okay, but that doesn't really answer whether or not that helped, but okay. And then he comes out, says some things, doesn't really elaborate on his condition, and then in the end 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 just says she fixes him? Brother, what did you do to my little rat? If you think about most action animes, a huge aspect of what keeps them engaging is by having multiple conflicts intertwined and at some point interact with each other. If you look at the Hidan and Kakuzu arc, you're constantly bouncing between Shikamaru's struggle with losing his sensei, his team's battle with two Akatsuki members, all while Naruto is training to master a new attack within a time limit, keep control over his Nine-Tails power, defend himself and the village from the Akatsuki, while also trying to surpass Sasuke so that he can eventually bring him back to the village. These conflicts avoid becoming a jumbled mess because a lot of these conflicts have already been laid out previously, and despite not all of them being constantly in the forefront, every now and then you'll see Naruto accidentally tapping into the Nine-Tails, or him talking about his goals. You're aware that these are constraints that the characters have to work under. Wuthering Waves has a similar structure. Abby dying or starving or whatever the fuck is happening to him has been happening for a while, and our goal to meet with the Sentinel was laid out since 1.3, while the conflict that takes the forefront is Cantarella's and more importantly, 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏's. But this could have also been the perfect time to highlight more of Abby's problems, and honestly he's far from disposable. Without Abby, we would have been cooked in 1.0 when fending off against the Ovathrax, and in 2.0 when he literally fended off a dragon and dragged our body away from danger. Like, he's not a disposable character and is by extension a part of Rover. So his problems are ours, and we have no idea what the consequences of losing him will be to us. Like, that anger point moment for Rover would have hit even harder if while Rover held 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏's weakened body, Abby came out and with the last of his waning energy, held the swords off. Cause you're not gonna tell me this fucking whack-ass 3-star sword is able to hold that shit off. At least let the Digimon that fought the dragon do it. It not only pushes Rover's motivation, since this is supposed to be the run where nobody dies, but it further cements that right now, Rover is far from the powerhouse he used to be. But in that fight, we get a glimpse of it. And don't even say this is power of friendship shit, because even beforehand it was power of friendship shit. So adding a vital character who also has a stake in it doesn't change that. Does Kuro Games reinvent the wheel? No, not really, but it doesn't need to. Originality isn't the automatic cheat code to a good story. I'd rather take a good story that's been spun around the block 7 different times in new paint jobs over slop that isn't cohesive, but has never been done before. A good story is able to keep you interested, and an even better story is able to reuse common tropes or themes and still maintain your interest. The concept of 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 being the resonator to both Imperator and Leviathan, but that ultimately leading to Leviathan's downfall, because both 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 and Fleur-de-Lis served as a weak point against him, and it allowing the breach of the rule, stating Sentinels could only have one resonator, that was cool, and it makes me wonder what other divine laws there might be. 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏's decision to not forget her memories, but still walk a new life is a satisfying conclusion that combines both the idea of never letting your past dictate who you are, but also not forgoing the events that shaped who you've become. I genuinely think that this story, despite its flaws, is a good one that does its job and does it well. 2.2's story is a satisfiable length with memorable cutscenes, strong character establishment and development, exhilarating highs that felt earned, and a conclusion that satisfies all the characters' motives while also setting up for whatever comes next. That being said, it's still a story that needs to be tightened a bit. It leaves things that could have been clarified open to interpretation for no reason, and a little more focus on Abby's issue would have truly allowed me personally to feel more immersed, and it would have added a little more tension. So considering all that, I'll give the story a solid 7 out of 10. It's good enough to raise an eyebrow, but it's not like the absolute cream of the crop. Yet. Now, before I get put on a stake for my rating, hear me out, okay? First of all, a 7 out of 10 isn't bad, not by a long shot. Realistically, most things that you consume that are above average quality are actually 6.5s, and hell, even a 5 or a 6 aren't really considered bad. I feel like that ever since we started calling things mid or peak, it's seriously skewed people's understandings of ratings. Now, that being said, the reason I gave the story a 7 out of 10 is because if we're going to factor in how the story is actually told, easily the score clears 8.5 or 9. I wasn't kidding when I mentioned how important storytelling is. The right person can make Humpty Dumpty cracking his ass on the pavement seem like an episode ripped straight out of Attack on Titan. When I say Wuthering Waves storytelling for 2.2 has transcended my expectations, I mean it when I truly think that 2.2 is honestly better than 1.3 and practically kissing the heels of 2.0. The only thing that keeps 2.0 above is the sheer quantity of how much content we got, given the nature of being a version update. Like this video if you want a 2.0 patch review, thanks. If you think I'm hyperbolizing, let me break it down to you. We'll work our way up by starting with the technical stuff. One thing that instantly caught my eye is the camera work. Wuthering Waves has utilized camera work in its cutscenes as far back as 1.1 most noticeably, and it's only gotten better. And I mean it. 2.2 is never lacking in keeping cutscenes engaging. From the first cutscene with 𝗖cie𝗽𝗆𝗵𝘁, we're given sweeping shots, aerial views, close-ups, establishing shots, unique framing, 360s that start at one point and end in another, and it just doesn't stop. No, seriously. You'll rarely find an animated cutscene that just leaves the characters in stasis, and if they are, they're still using minor motions or expansive facial expressions to keep our interest. When you're watching a story, it can be so easy to lose interest simply because what you're watching isn't what's happening to you. Why should you care for so long about something that isn't happening in your POV? The developers know this and constantly ensure that not only is the cutscene engaging and fresh, but also ensures that they're evoking a specific emotion. Let's take this cutscene in the beginning for example. You start with 2 establishing shots, framing the mostly clear skies and the tree that sways with the gentle breeze. Aided with the music, you're instantly feeling a sense of calmness and relaxation, and also familiarizing yourself with the environment. The camera then drops to the floor and slowly scrolls to the side, keeping 𝗖cie𝗽𝗆𝗵𝘁 in your focus amidst the environment that you're already familiar with, making her that much more of an effective contrast in keeping your focus on her. You're already familiar with the environment through the last 2 shots, so your brain hyperfixates on her. Rover comes from the side, and then we get a close-up on 𝗖cie𝗽𝗆𝗵𝘁 before the camera closes in on her eye, which opens as Rover approaches. The camera then drops to the leaf and her lips before tracking the leaf as it's carried away by the wind, and finally only focusing on the rover when the leaf is carried past him. Now, I know I might be glazing a little bit, but you have to realize they could have had the exact same cutscene by just having the camera be up here and have the rover walk up and start the conversation. But they didn't, and that's the difference between an engaging cutscene and going from point A to point B. There's so much more emotion, so much more character, so much more charm by giving these cutscenes more life and more to do than just having us see character A talk to character B. Of course, the action scenes aren't lacking either. Right here, rather than just watching these 2 fight from a third-person POV, which would have been fine, the camera is tracking the attacks. When Rover thrusts his sword, when they send out energy waves, we're always following the attack throughout the fight. On top of that, The camera is constantly switching from the rover side to 𝗿𝗏𝗄𝗆, giving it a feeling of a turn-based battle, until finally as the action kicks up to an even higher gear, and the camera is just swirling around the chaos of the fight. It gives the cutscene a kinetic feeling that keeps your adrenaline pumping, despite not even actually being in the fight. And that's the key to a good action scene, making your audiences feel like they're a part of it. If you look at any top shonen anime, there's a huge focus on motion and impact. It's why when Sasuke slams Naruto with the Chidori, you react. When Frieza lunges at Goku and you're seeing it from behind Frieza, until Goku sends the filthiest gut punch of all time into his stomach, you instinctively react. When Bakugo is literally flying through the air and finally lands with a crazy punch to Deku's ribs, no matter what you feel about the show, you felt that hit. The worst thing you could do when you're telling a story to someone is make them feel disconnected from the world and the events that are happening, or make the audience feel like they know what's going to happen. And Wuthering Waves does a good job at keeping you invested, whether it's the relaxed introduction of a new character or the violent climax of your journey. The cutscenes that don't have remarkable camera work make up by having a strong sense of style and direction. This cutscene that portrays the crowning of the Blessed Maiden uses the stained glass art style, very reminiscent of the paintings we encountered in 2.0 storyline, and akin to the art pieces found throughout the medieval period in Europe, which fits perfectly in this region and the kind of story they're trying to tell. This shot right here that hides the conclusion of our battle with 𝗿𝗏𝗄𝗆, but reveals it through the reflection of the shattered glass, and quickly showing a shot of Leviathan in the final shard of glass, symbolizing the shattering of 𝗏𝗏𝗆's preordained destiny. It's a small touch, but they went that extra mile just to present it in a more creative way. Cutscenes are special and are essentially rewards in games, so they should be treated as such. The dialogue in these cutscenes are way better too. Very rarely was I confused by the actual information given by the characters, but more like contextual stuff like the order of events or like how something happened. That, I will say, kinda needed a little bit of work. I understand that they want to keep things a mystery, but when it's post-story and I'm still quadruple checking if I have the order of events wrong, I'd like to think it's not me being incompetent. That aside, the dialogue holds weight. It's charming when it needs to be, and it doesn't feel awkward. I feel 1.0 suffered the most from this, where exposition was dragged out and slow, and over-explained, which ruined the flow of what's supposed to be an action RPG. Here, the beginning was a little yappy, but it was good yap. I was interested, I was able to understand, and it kept me thinking about what was going to happen. When you get that scene about 𝗏𝗏𝗆 despising pineapple pizza, it gave her more life, and when we're just wandering about and I'm listening to the characters chit-chat, it just makes the game feel more alive. I know some people hate it, but I absolutely love when characters talk mid-game. No cutscene, just randomly while you're playing. My fondest memories of Final Fantasy 15 is just listening to the guys talk to each other, because it reminds me of my friends when we're going out.
Wow, this place is so romantic.
Then you get to enjoy it with us.
All three of us.
You are a lucky man.
It brings a sense of relatability to these fantastical characters and scenarios. On top of that, the VA work is especially strong here. Wuthering Waves received harsh criticism on its voice acting, and
For better or for worse, you may even feel each other's emotions.
it was rightfully deserved. Let's be real. It was slow, it lacked emotion, and sometimes it just felt like the actor was told to say the line without any context of what was actually happening in the scene.
Till we meet again, dear friends.
You're not going anywhere.
But over time, the VAs have made gradual and noticeable improvements, truly blowing us away with the arrival of 2.0. Needless to say, 2.2 was able to surpass their previous standards with flying colors. All the voice actors are giving incredible performances throughout the entire story. You could really feel 𝗏𝗏𝗆's desperation as she frantically tries to break the barrier sealing Rover.
At least, damn it!
You can feel how drained Cantarella feels, but you also still understand her resolve hasn't weakened as she fends off the tacit discords, giving us the opportunity to resolve things. Chacona's lightheartedness oozes through her playful mannerisms and lines, And even Abby has some really solid delivery in his comedic moments, but also in the end, you could feel an almost childlike innocence when they say Cartethia is dead.
The frequency in her body is already...
Even Imperator, who's supposed to be a rather emotionless but wise character, has a moment of uncertainty when he asks Rover if he made the right decision.
𝗖𝗵𝗵𝗵𝗵, was I wrong?
It humanizes him, and that's something that's hard to do with characters that are supposed to be godlike and incomprehensible. On top of all that, with all the lingo that surrounds these Sentinels, it paints them as computer beings or AI, so giving us this line that reassures us that yes, they are Guardians, yes, the end result does matter to them, and yes, they are a character that has a stake in the conflict. One last thing, Rover being voiced throughout almost the entirety of the patch, not just in the main story but also in some side quests, is such an amazing thing. Giving the main character a voice runs the risk of breaking the immersion of players who try to self-insert, and you could tell they were aware of that in the early versions when almost every line Rover said was flat and honestly knocked you out like a handful of melatonin and 3 bottles of NyQuil. But honestly, I'm okay with that if this is the quality we're getting from them.
I can't speak for what I wasn't a part of. You did what you could in that moment. Anyone still standing because of it doesn't get to judge.
Can you tell I really like this scene? The combination of being understanding and neutral, but also having the weight of all those lives weigh down on him really reminds you that behind all the spectacle, thousands of lives were lost. Also, Cartethia's voice changes slightly, mixing the mature and warrior-like cadence of Fleur-de-Lis, and the more royal and young Cartethia's, was a nice touch to really round out her character. Now, this last part is something that I didn't fully grasp until I reread the story. Themes are crucial to a good story. They shape the events that occur and dictate why they play out the way they do. There are clear themes such as the paving of your own path, clearly shown by Cantarella and Cartethia. There's the theme of letting the past reinforce you but not allowing it to determine who you are and what you do, which is the biggest takeaway from Cartethia's story. Rebirth itself is a theme that has been running throughout the course of the 2.x patch storylines, fitting considering Renacida itself translates to rebirth. However, something that's a little less obvious is this lingering theme of duty that borders near obsession throughout the story, stated by Cartethia herself.
Bound by obsession, till relieved of duty.
You have Cantarella, whose main role as the leader of the 𝗖𝗍ℍℇ is to uncover the truth and unbind themselves from the Leviathan's whisper. But not only that, but save the people around her. In the cutscene right before our big fight, we learn that she not only gives up her second awakening, which we saw with 𝗖𝗍ℍ is not easily obtained, but also pushes herself past that exhaustion to allow Cartethia and Rover to fully focus on their situation and save the people of Renacida and free the 𝗖𝗍ℍ family from the Thernoidian's curse, who, by the way, do not even fuck with Cantarella like that, as we learn in her companion quest. She makes this decision with damn near zero hesitation, as if it's the only choice she's ever considered. We have Cartethia, who, despite her harsh revelations, decides that her life is a suitable cause for the end of the Leviathan and fully faults herself for what happened, despite not having any way of truly knowing her true relationship with Leviathan. Fleur-de-Lis, Cartethia's other half, bounds herself to the eternal fight in order to hold off the Thernoidian, refusing to back down, ensuring that Leviathan will suffer her disobedience. Her will is so strong that the part of her that wanted to live literally split away and said, "Yeah, you got that shit, homie. I'm a piece the fuck out." I'm sorry, that's gotta be the hardest fucking shit I've ever heard. Even through Cadanto, a mini-boss, in Cartethia's first Echo, he was so bound to his duty that even when he was corrupted and turned into a tacit discord, he recognized the sword and was fighting to protect it. Even Imperator himself only fully moves on and passes once they get the approval from us, the rover that they deserve rest. We go over intense ideas such as generational trauma, survivor's guilt, and imposter syndrome. These are dark themes that aren't easy to tackle, and while I can't expect every single idea to be fully fleshed out in a 3 to 4 hour gacha game storyline, I can appreciate Kuro for the respect they give the story and the respect they give to us as the audience. These characters are all facing their own struggle, yet they remain connected, and that's how you keep a theme alive and refreshing while also keeping the characters unique. If I'm gonna be real, a part of me wants to lower the score for the story mode just because the storytelling carries so hard. But I'm not gonna do the story like that, especially because all things considered, the plot holes aren't too crazy, and to be fair, we need to unravel a little bit more of the world before definitively calling things a plot hole, in my opinion. So with that being said, with great cutscene direction, great voice direction, great character development, and incredible usage of themes, storytelling alone gets a hefty 9 out of 10. The soundtrack is pretty good. I mean, ever since 2.0, the soundtrack has had a massive leap in quality. I think with the introduction of 𝗖cie𝗽𝗆𝗆𝗵𝘁, it really gave Kuro the opportunity to stretch their legs and explore different genres, because while the synth EDM rave metal was cool, it got kinda tiring after a while. That being said, Crownless's theme is still a fucking banger. But with 2.2, the tracks really hone in on this fancy aspect of this patch, making sure it aligns with the story. You have an insane arrangement of orchestral instruments ranging from pianos to violins to chimes, and is that a tuba? And these tracks are genuinely really fucking good. No, seriously, I'm not even someone who typically listens to video game music outside of, well, video games. But when I put Unending Verses on while I was running errands, it really took me to a whole different world. Some of these pieces are very atmospheric and aren't anything to run home about, but they're still pleasing to the ear. But then you get hit with some genuinely beautiful tracks like Moonlit Solitude and Lost at Sea. Then you get hit with some bangers like Holy Harmony and No Life for Sanctuary. Or this song that starts out chaotic and intense. But then transitions into this brighter sound. And don't worry, they haven't completely left their old style of music. And I mean, do I even need to get started on the vocal tracks? These tracks are genuinely incredible. And kudos to the vocalists, because whoever they are, they sound amazing. I tried to figure out who the vocalist is, but yeah, good job all of you guys, I guess. Cartethia's theme with Glory I Shall Fall is incredible. And I love how, along with the lyrics literally being about her story, it very much has the sound of a folklore song or a hymn. Which, by the way, these songs really sound like a cohesive package when you realize they all share this one motif.
Making joy
Like, come on, it's a small touch, but it's so satisfying. That being said, I do admit the ambience tracks can sometimes blend together, but I could easily understand any one of these being someone's favorite. Overall, a solid package, so I'd give it a 7.5 or 8 out of 10 for me. Alright, we got the big boys out of the way, and from here on out, I don't think I'll be as yappy because it's all rather self-explanatory. But if you're still here, I'm assuming you don't mind a little yap. You play gacha games after all.
Got him. We fucking got him.
Sorry. Anyway, we're going to take a look at the playable content and judge it based on quality and length. If we're going to be frank, I think this is a huge step up from 2.1. The main story quest, obviously, is great. It's a good length, good amount of content, good amount of quality, and is a pretty good time. I think I've made my stance clear on that. That being said, this main quest takes us over to 2 new maps, the Beerwater, I think that's how you pronounce it, Beor, and Avinalia. They're 2 pretty decently sized maps, Beerwater being nothing too crazy to write home about, but the concept is simple and cool. It's an enormous canyon or ravine, whichever you want to call it. You could choose to traverse it through the monorail from the 𝗖cie𝗽𝗆𝗆𝗵𝘁 house, which takes you straight through it, or you could actually fly and go to the cliff sides and explore from there. From there, it's your standard affair, but that doesn't take away from how visually pleasing it is. There are wide grassy fields, enormous waterfalls, and tons of enemies to absolutely slaughter for your echo that will inevitably roll into defense twice. No, I'm not upset. Coral, fix the echo system for the love of God. Anyway, the main new map is within Avinalia, a floating seminary in the sky. One word, gorgeous. This map is genuinely stunning from every angle, and I promise you, you'll spend at least one moment to stop and take a picture because everything from the atmosphere, lighting, and architecture is absolutely perfect. It nails the concept of a location that was weathered by time and tragedy, leaving it in ruins, but even despite this, you can tell this is once a locale that was considered a crown jewel. It also nails the Elden Ring concept, and you cannot tell me this location isn't heavily Elden Ring inspired. You have enormous towers, grand archways, beautiful waterfalls that cascade down large walls that also change color based on the time of day, all adorned with flags, stained glass murals, and statues that evoke a sense of magic and power. They nailed the design of this map, and on top of that, it isn't a hassle to explore. See, this map has a gravity mechanic where you have the ability to manipulate it and walk on the sides or even upside down. It's cool and spices it up, almost making it feel like you're exploring an entirely different map. And once you're done with the story and need to explore, you could easily traverse through the map without much hassle because they include a button in the map interface that switches the gravity for you, so you don't have to look for the specific switches. I remember how much hell I went through exploring 𝗵𝗁 because I kept having to hit those, like the hourglasses or something, whatever would like trigger me walking on the walls or upside down. That shit took so long and was so annoying, so I really appreciated this feature. Both maps have a decent number of puzzles and chests to open, some hidden secrets, and a good number of elite bosses to fight, so you can get some achievements, echoes, and asteroid. Plus, Avinalia introduces some new types of enemies, and with it, a new echo set, which is always welcome. Overall, good maps and a decent time sink. Side quests are, well, there's 2. Or 3? I say 3 with a question mark because after I finished one of the 2 side quests, I had another one appear which just ended up being talking to 2 people. You get some lore stuff, but besides that, it's kind of nothing, which sucks. You get lame rewards, and there isn't much to the quest besides being somewhat connected to the Cantarella companion quest, but just barely. The other 2 side quests are mostly picture-taking quests, one of them being connected to the event. Let's tackle that one first, because in my opinion, it's the much more interesting one. You find this old man who is writing a memoir and requests you to get some pictures for him to refresh his memory. As you take these pictures, you soon see visions of the past, and you find out that his daughter once resided in Avinalia, studying to become an acolyte just like her father. Every picture you take, you uncover more of her past and see events unfold through her perspective, ultimately leading up to the crowning of 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 and moments before her demise during the Dark Tide. You return to the old man and give him the pictures, and he asks if you saw his daughter Rosalie, and asked if she was surviving in the ruins. You are given the option to tell him the truth or lie to him, and I chose to tell him the truth, and man, it's honestly heartbreaking. He explains how he was the one that urged her to study in Avinalia, and how he was intending to attend this coronation ceremony, explaining how his visit was delayed, and these delays inevitably saving his life. He talks about how he failed as both a father and acolyte, failing to protect his daughter and the sacred land, and man, it's a genuinely sad story and a beautiful tale of spiritual strength. I wasn't expecting this from the typical photography event quest, but it's appreciated, and I hope they do more things like this. The other side quest is also another photography quest, which is not as interesting. You basically take a bunch of these plushies and take pictures of them throughout Avinalia, leading up to a fun little 2D section that we haven't seen since 1.0, I think. It's cool, but nothing spectacular or anything special to take note of. Of course, with new maps, we are treated to a new exploration quest. You find this Nimbus Wraith who has a familiar frequency. This Wraith then leads you around Avinalia before finally revealing access to the lower floor of the Holy Spire of Confluence, which leads you to the Phantom Echo of Capitanius. Very sick, love me some black and red. Soon, after the fight, we realize that the familiar energy is actually Cantarella's, which leads us to the deduction that Imperator did whatever they could to minimize the damage done to all the fallen resonators who had overclocked trying to resonate with Imperator. You then find out these light sparks are actually memory fragments, the same memory fragments that Cantarella gathered up and sealed within Tervine to return Cartetia's power. She also reveals that if she were to gather all these memory fragments, she could potentially reawaken her second awakening and become the Blessed Maiden again, but she doesn't want to. Honestly, such a dope fucking character, bro. After a couple more stops, these light sparks lead you to the Lake of Spirits, which is a stunning little area where you can see some shooting stars and gather some asteroid, all accompanied by an amazing vocal track, which I found out was not Chinese at all, but actually sung in the Chaos language, a canon language of Solaris 3. Reminded me of Skyrim 3, so immediate win in my book. It's a fun quest with some cool story connections that lead to a nice reward in the new location, so pretty cool stuff. And with a new Resonator, we also get their companion quest. Cantarella's companion quest is definitely one of the best ones, giving you a whole new location to explore, cool mechanics, and an interesting story to follow along as you unravel more of the mystery that surrounds Cantarella. You learn more of her past, more about the Phasalia trials, and get some get a new house. Yeah. The soundtrack is very Fright Night-esque, giving the quest a haunted manor type of vibe. There's cool mechanics in accessing rooms based on if you're in the past or present. And with some dope visuals, it offers a unique time that separates itself from other companion quests and is a good time. Oh, and the boss actually has a fun mechanic to it. Companion quests kind of suck near the end because the boss is usually just like a random overworld boss that we fought before, just with a recolor or not even fully colored. But this boss, while still being just Mephis, has a little more to make it more interesting, which I can appreciate. And the recolor is dope, so yeah. We also got a new tactical hologram. We got the Dragon of Dirge, and he's okay, I guess. Not really that difficult in my opinion. His attacks are pretty telegraphed, and once you play him a couple of times, you kind of get the gist of it. It's not a terrible fight, but there's definitely more to be desired. Still, holograms are a highlight of this game, and more are always welcome. As of right now, you have your typical fanfare of events. The 7-day login, the photography event that we went over, and as I'm writing this, today is the first day of the new event, which is supposed to be like Tower of Babel from PGR. I've probably already made a video about this by now, but to keep things short and sweet, this game mode is incredible. You go into these stages where you fight either a horde of enemies or a boss or both, but the kicker is that you get to apply these modifiers called stress modules, which increase the stress level. In normal human speak, they're difficulty modifiers, and the best part, there's no timer. Without going too deep into it, it's a fun endgame mode that is open to anyone since they also offer trial resonators, and truly emphasizes Wuthering Wave's strong suit, its combat. It's a fun game mode that gives you the choice of deciding whether you just want the rewards or if you want to truly challenge yourself and test your abilities. I can't praise this game mode enough, and I can't wait to see where they take it in the future. I actually wrote this segment after I finished this script, and I'm so dead ass when I say this game mode bumped up the score for this segment by a whole point. There's also a flight event, and it's free rewards, I guess. Honestly, it was kind of lame, and after seeing what they did with the race event, I was definitely expecting more. Though I don't need everything to be hardcore content, being able to play an event with a single hand isn't my idea of fun. So I'll thank them for the free rewards, but this event could be done way better. There's also the returning co-op event if you gaze into the abyss of dreams, where you team up with friends and select different echoes that have unique abilities and fight whatever may come your way. The real fun part to this event is when you finish the normal versions of the fight and fight the hard mode versions. It essentially becomes tactical holograms with friends, which... wait, that's fucking sick. They even added a scoreboard so you can compare times with your friends. Really cool event, and I hope they lean more into this when it comes to combat co-op events. We're also getting the return of the Lalo campaign and survey exploration event, where you log in and complete tasks to get some points and get rewards once you reach a certain number of points. These two are essentially just free rewards, so not much to complain about. I appreciate the introduction of new events. I just hope they continue to innovate, and hopefully we get more than just one per patch. That being said, tons of rewards that don't involve too much effort. All in all, there's tons of content in this patch, a surprising amount for a patch that's supposed to be shorter than the usual patch length. Most of it is pretty cool stuff, but there are some things that are a little undercooked or clearly glossed over. Nothing too crazy, so I think this patch deserves a solid 8.5 out of 10 in terms of content. Now, if I'm going to be honest, this might be the patch's weakest point. And before you guys crucify me, please hear me out. This is not an attack on 𝗖𝗆𝗆𝗆 specifically. Put the pitchfork down, please. Let's take it slow and simple, okay? So, for new Resonators, we got two actually. We got, of course, the featured unit 𝗖𝗆𝗆𝗆, but alongside her is the introduction to Arrow Rover. And despite these characters being very cool, they sort of have the same problem, one being significantly more apparent than the other. So, 𝗖𝗆𝗆𝗆 is a Havoc unit that has a lot going on in her kit. She has coordinated attacks, she has healing, she can apply a slow to enemies, she has multiple skills that count as echoes, she has a domain expansion, she buffs Havoc and skill damage. There's a lot to unpack. She essentially fills that sub DPS and healer role for a Havoc carry. That doesn't exist yet. See, she has a dope kit, she really does. I like the concept of her setting up this underwater realm and enhancing her own damage while supplying a decent amount of healing to the entire team. I like that even though she's a rectifier user, she's actually pretty close to the action and she genuinely feels good to play. That is when you're in that Forte mode. See, okay, her normal gameplay is very underwhelming, but when you enter the Forte mode, she is fun as fuck. The problem is you don't get to spend a lot of time in that Forte mode. It sucks. I wish they made it a little longer. I don't know, but it feels clunky going between the two. Despite that, still a fun time. So, fun isn't the problem. It's more like she kinda doesn't have a purpose right now. See, her outro skill buffs Havoc characters and skill damage, and as of right now, there isn't a premier Havoc skill damage user. So, half of her outro skill is kinda being wasted. I mean, you could use it on Danjin, I guess, but Danjin is a character that prefers to not be healed and honestly runs better solo than with a team. So, that's not really a good choice. There's Camellia, but Camellia uses basic attack instead of skill damage, and most people would rather use Sanwa or Rochia's outro for Camellia. And I guess you could slot 𝗖𝗆𝗆𝗆 into a Camellia team, but your entire buff is going to be wasted on Sanwa, and half of it is going to be wasted on Rochia since she's a heavy attack user. So using her in her given role is kinda hard, especially when she's in the same patch as Shorekeeper's rerun. Then, running her as a main DPS is awkward as hell when Camellia is literally rerunning alongside 𝗖𝗆𝗆𝗆𝗆's banner, So if you're looking for a Havoc DPS, you're probably better off pulling Camellia. Or, honestly, you could even run Havoc Rover, who you have for free. What she does have going for her, however, is that her use of coordinated attacks and skill buffing make her a great partner to 𝗖cie, which frees up 𝗖𝗃 and allows her to fully commit to the Carlotta team. But is that really good enough to justify telling a new player to pull for her? Of course, this is all just meta talk, and it shouldn't dissuade you from pulling the character if you just like the character for her design or story. But if you're looking to build up your account, you're better off pulling this character on a rerun. She's not unusable, but as of right now, she just doesn't have a good partner that fully utilizes her. Far from unplayable. Arrow Rover, though. Arrow Rover makes me upset. As a Xion enjoyer, this unit had me so hyped from the moment he was announced. His animations are sick, his abilities are cool, his capabilities and what he can do are sick in concept. He even comes with his own free 5-star sword, which looks sick. One minor issue though. He's fucking useless. And no, I'm not hyperbolizing right now. As of April 3rd, 2025, scratch that, as of April 10th, 2025, Arrow Rover is a dead unit. Why, you might ask? His kit is borderline unusable. This unit it doesn't feel like it knows what it wants to be. For a character that is supposed to be a support, Arrow Rover has a lot of damage in its kit. But in order to get that damage out, it has to spend a good amount of time on field, which is usually a no-go for supports. But you know what? Whatever. That's just the start of his issues. His kit revolves around enabling arrow erosion. He's able to convert any other debuff into arrow erosion, and with his outro skill, increase the max cap of arrow erosion. Cool stuff. Sick. Love the idea. Just one issue, this character can't apply arrow erosion himself. I genuinely don't understand it. Why are we releasing the character that enhances arrow erosion but can't apply it himself at all? In fact, no character can apply arrow erosion at all. So, once again, we have a character that is released with no proper partner. The only one who can make use of his ability is Phoebe in her confession mode, but if you're using Phoebe with Rover, that begs the question, why aren't you using Spectral Rover? Phoebe in confession mode, as of right now, sucks, and has no purpose other than funneling into herself if she's solo, or doesn't have someone who could provide Spectral Frazzle for herself. And if you're running Phoebe as your main DPS, guess what? You're running Spectral Rover, because why wouldn't you? I genuinely don't get why they implemented this type of character that is so anti-synergistic with the entire cast of characters. But then you have his weapon, which has a Rover-specific passive that amplified arrow damage by 10% for 30 seconds, which is cool, but it's still useless, because guess what? The buff is nowhere near any other buff in the game. I'm gonna be biased here, but I need you guys to understand how bad this actually is. Let's say you're running a Xion, right? Arrow Rover is probably the first character that has a potential to buff Xion since launch, and you're finally excited to change up the Mortefi Xion lineup. So, you put him as your healer, and you realize, wait a minute, Arrow Rover kinda fucking sucks when I could literally have 𝗖𝗍, Verina, or Shorekeeper. Worst case scenario, you cope a little with 𝗖𝗍's awkward buffing mechanic and grabbing the feather. Best case scenario, you have Shorekeeper who literally buffs the entire team with attack multiple times, heals, and gives you crit rate and crit damage. 10% arrow damage is not competing with any of the other supporters in the game. Okay, let's say you have Arrow Rover be your sub DPS. Well, then you realize that 10% damage buff still isn't competing with Mortefi's massive 38% heavy attack damage deepen on top of his ultimate, which does even more DPS when you're doing heavy attacks. So please, tell me, where does this character go? Listen, I get it. He's meant to be for future characters. But my god, having a unit that's so dead out of the water after the incredible presentation of his abilities earlier? I'm surprised more people aren't complaining about this, honestly. That being said, the most I can give Arrow Rover is that he is another option for players that need a healer on their team. And he is still fun to play. But I cannot in good faith say that this character is a good character as of right now. And that makes me sad. because Arrow Rover is so fucking cool. Now, with all that out of the way, there is one saving grace to these banners. Two if you want to be technical. Despite the new characters ranging from a little awkward to borderline unusable, the reruns of this patch are seriously the stars of the show. Running alongside Cantarella is 𝗼𝗆𝗆, who is debatably the best character in the game. She has AoE, she can nuke, she has crazy damage scaling, she's easy to play, she's the only premium Havoc main DPS. There's a lot of reasons she's incredible. The only reason why you wouldn't want her would probably because you technically already have a free Havoc damage dealer in the form of Havoc Rover. But honestly, 𝗼𝗆𝗆 is such an incredible character that you might as well pull her. She's great in literally every game mode. I'm not kidding. You'll trivialize Tower of Adversity, she sweeps up Wuthering Waste, and with a little bit of skill, holograms will also just get annihilated. I don't think I could sell 𝗼𝗆𝗆 enough, so I'll just leave it at that. Incredible DPS, probably the best DPS alongside Carlotta and 𝗖cie. And then we have who is probably the only must pull in the game, Shorekeeper. When I tell you that Shorekeeper alone can take your account from a C to a high A, I'm not kidding. She buffs the team with attack with her outro skill and with her skill, if you have her weapon. She heals the entire team through her skill and ultimate, she has some grouping potential, she buffs both crit rate and crit damage, and she has a nuke in the form of her enhanced intro skill. This character can either fix characters that aren't built to your liking yet, or take your strongest team and push them to even higher levels. The only downside to her is that she has a bit of a steep energy regen requirement, but still possible with a good amount of investment even if you're missing her weapon, which is more than I could say for a certain pirate. She also gives a unique buff to Rover and can give you an extra chance to dodge, so if you're suffering from a bit of skill issue, Shorekeeper is the character for you. Now, there's a bit of an issue regarding the state of 4-star characters in this game. As of 2.2, we have only received 2 new 4-star characters in the form of Yohu and Lumi, and they are kinda whatever. Lumi can be fun to mess around with, but they both are kind of in the category of pull them and forget about them. The featured 4 stars on these banners aren't the worst, but aren't too friendly to new players either. Donjin is essentially playing on hard mode, thriving off of being low health. 𝗖cie can be strong, but you need her sequence nodes and some heavy investment. And Yanwu, he's just bad. He's useful for 𝗖cie, but at this point, you have a handful of better options. Needless to say, while Cantarella is a great character and still has viability, her arrival combined with Arrow Rover reeks of awkward timing. That being said, the real heroes of this patch are definitely the reruns, giving incredible value with their first reappearance, and I can't deny them that right. With that being said, let's go over the ratings. Cantarella is a strong character that can satisfy multiple roles with a fun and unique playstyle and will definitely be a good character to have for future releases. But she struggles to find a spot on a team where her capabilities are fully utilized, while also being on the more difficult side when it comes to her rotations and managing all her different mechanics, getting her a 6 out of 10 for her current state. Arrow Rover gets a 3 out of 10. Due to the fact that his kit is barely functional currently, and he gets severely outclassed in the only viable role he can play by characters like 𝗖cie, who you get for free, and characters that are available in this very patch. While he is fun to play and will definitely have value in the near future, as of 2.2, I cannot recommend this character in good faith. That being said, the banners themselves get a solid 9 out of 10, being hard carried by high value units in the reruns that are insane for anyone who is starting the game, or someone who has been playing for a while and couldn't pick these two up during their first appearance. Now, this is mostly going to be a category that concerns current players more than new players. New players have immediate access to a plethora of 𝗖cie through main story quests, progression rewards, exploration, and achievements, so pulling a character for them is pretty much guaranteed. But just in case you like to have some tangible numbers, I guess I could give you some more information. Thanks to 𝗖cie_𝗵𝗁 on Reddit who created WoWop Bookkeeping. Makes my job so much easier. Give it a look, they put a ton of work into it, and it's super detailed. I'll leave a link to their post in the description below. As a free-to-play player, starting from all the way in the beginning and 100%ing everything, you will amass a whopping 53,839 asterite, which roughly translates to about 336 pulls. This guarantees you about 4 5 stars if you hit hard pity all 4 times in a row. This does not include the store refreshes, Loot Knight subscriptions, or the battle pass, so do remember that you can also net yourself a decent number of pulls through those methods as well. This patch by itself, for concurrent players, not as kind. As a free-to-play player, you'll net about 11,237 asterite, 12 limited pulls, and 7 limited weapon pulls. While if you were to get the Battle Pass and Loot Knight subscription, you jump to 14,887 asterite and 17 limited pulls. For context, this is the second least amount of asterite we've gotten in a patch, just barely above the asterite count for 1.2. With all the free resources, the player is barely able to guarantee themselves a character, and if you happen to lose the 50-50, well, that's tough. Now, the shorter patch duration does play a role in the lower asterite count if you're a light spender, but considering this is a patch with 3 limited characters and weapons, 2 of which are incredibly high value, this amount is just simply not enough for a free-to-play player. Though I doubt this will change, I think the amount of asterite given per patch needs to increase. Now, let me preface this with I'm more than grateful for Kuro Games' generosity, which they have shown numerous times, and as far as hearing out the players, Kuro has done an amazing job at listening and compromising. That being said, including the 50-50 gacha system and not giving us enough asterite to actually combat it is such a shit way to incentivize players to spend money. Losing that chance to get the new character and getting stuck with the furry is not a good feeling, and can honestly kill someone's motivation to play the game. While I understand that a free-to-play shouldn't reap the same exact benefits as someone who does spend their money, I do think there needs to be a little more lenience. At the very least, up the asterite count to guarantee a 5-star and maybe reach about 50 to 60 pity. This way, people who won their 50-50s will have a decent chance at getting the signature weapon, while people who lost the 50-50 will have a second chance at getting their desired character. Maybe if they're feeling really generous, in a patch with 3 characters with 3 weapons, enough pulls to guarantee 2 5-stars would be great. And it would put players in the same scenario, win 50-50 and get the weapon, or lose 50-50 and be able to guarantee the character. It'll feel less predatory and people will still be inclined to spend for the weapon, since the weapon banner is guaranteed. Plus, chasing after dupes is naturally more desirable, since you get 2 sequences in the shop. Now, I'm sure there are flaws to this, and if either one is more realistically viable, it's probably the first one. But that's just my opinion. Let me know what you guys think, and if you guys think differently, let me know in the comments below. Overall, this patch is definitely on the rougher side of things for returning players, and I'm gonna have to give it a 5 out of 10. So yeah, this ended up being a Giga video, just like how I feared, and you know what? It's what I expected with a 26-page script. And this video was also supposed to come out a week or 2 ago, and I thought I could get it out before I went on to my trip to South Korea, but yeah, now we're, what, 4 or 5 days away from 2.3, and I'm still editing this. And it's probably uploaded by now, but whatever. With that, we went over almost everything in 2.2, and some honorable mentions I'll bring up that I didn't really go over are like minor QOLs introduced to the game, like more customizable graphic settings, some new shortcuts, and the readjustment of Wuthering Waste. If you haven't checked out my video regarding the issues of 𝗖cie, definitely give it a check, but they essentially adjusted some numbers, made it easier to get the full rewards. That's about it. While the change is nice, the mode is far from ideal. Still, a step in the right direction. So that just leaves the final score. And after going over everything, I have to give patch 2.2 a solid 9 out of 10. If I were to split it up, I'd probably give the patch a 10 out of 10 for new players and an 8 out of 10 for returning players. It's just too good of a patch for someone to jump into if they've never played before. A solid roster of playable characters to jumpstart their account, a pretty expansive new area to add to the already decent chunk of content that they get to go through, a solid roster of events that are not only fun but also just give free shit, and an endgame that isn't so completely out of reach that if they do grind it out, they could also reap the rewards. That, and it's right before an anniversary patch. So not only are we going to be ready for some insane rewards, but they also still get to reap the benefits of 1.0 rewards. This feels a little moot considering there are, 5 days left of 2.2, but whatever, you guys get the point. For a returning player, we get a decent chunk of content, some new goodies, and also some nice QOL that I feel will definitely appreciate more as players that played without them, but still have a little more to be desired. Semantics and technicalities out of the way, this patch was a seriously incredible and honestly continues Kuro's reputation of taking our feedback and really using it to create incredible content. They continue to evolve their game and give us the utmost quality, and I hope they continue the trend in 2.3 and onwards. So yeah, if you guys somehow made it to the end of this video, first of all, thank you. And also, please leave a like and comment down below and let me hear your thoughts. What did you guys think of the patch, and what did you like? What didn't you like? What do you want to see more of, and what do you think needs more improvement? If you enjoy Wuthering Waves content, hit that subscribe button and follow me on my socials, please. I'm trying to hit 100 followers on both Twitch, and I'm trying to hit 100 subscribers on YouTube, so join in. I'm usually streaming woo-wah, but I'm also doing variety. Mostly woo-wah right now, though. So, yeah. That pretty much wraps this up, so... Okay, bye!